Basic on snowshoe, because a couple of you have never been in this before. This is the deck, this is a toe, this is a tail. There's 2.5 rules of snowshoeing, and then you know everything I do. Marcus, do you want to? 2.5 rules of snowshoeing. Toes, tails. First rule, don't cross your toes because you'll fall on your face. Don't cross your tails because you'll fall on your butt. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, don't back up in snowshoes because they're weighted in the back, so you'll fall on your butt. And the half rule of snowshoeing is don't sidestep up a hill. They're meant to run straight up. That's what those bear claws are for. That's it. Case closed. We're done. We're done. That's essentially the rules of snowshoeing. It's age, weight, gender makes no difference. Whether you're a walker, plotter, or a sprinter, I know you. You know, you can do it. Power walkers are just fine. I taught my mom how to snowshoe when she was 76 years old and already had an artificial hip replacement. She used the poles just for security, and found out why her evil spawn child loved winter so much. She could never figure out why. She was from southern Illinois and northern Wisconsin. She just couldn't understand how anybody could like winter, and then she learned to snowshoe, and she changed her tune. With regard to poles, I own poles because I do go into some stupid places, and it's good to have the poles for security. So if you're in deep woods, deeper snow, it's nice to have them for balance. If you're, these are telescoping poles, so I'm gonna have them open for a while. Let me see if they pop up. There we go. So they will come apart when you don't want them to, and when you're on tape. Okay, so you can use cross-country ski poles. What you want is something. See, these are a little short for somebody my height. You want something ideally that's got this angle for you for balance purposes. For racing purposes, I'd never advocate for them unless you have a person with balance issues. Then if they want to use their, if they use crutches, let them just use their crutches. What you can do to help them is if you can get a crutch tip, something into their crutch tip to give them a little bit of grab. That's nice. Like I said, you can use a cross-country ski pole because it'll have the basket and kind of keeps the snow away. But for the most part, poles for snowshoeing are only for balance. They are not for acceleration. They're for acceleration in cross-country skiing because that's part of the power. Okay. In snowshoeing, they will not help your athlete go any faster, but they will provide balance, okay? So if they don't need them, I advocate for not using them. For the price, Red Feather also offers their poles at cost. And they're really a pretty good pole. So even if it's for your own personal use, I didn't say that. You can't beat the price that Red Feather offers the Special Olympics, so it's nice to have them. Also, when you're practicing in the summer, it's kind of nice to have them because, your bear claws will grab the grass a little bit more than they would grab the snow. So it's nice for that if you're going to have them working out in a field like this, which would be ideal. Using the poles would be okay for a balance thing because on a little bit more humid days, maybe the claws will grab a little bit more and throw us off balance. Basic rules of snowshoeing, just like track. Essentially like track, minus one detail. In track, if you start in lane 1 and you finish in lane 8, what happens? you're disqualified. In snowshoeing, if you start in lane 1 and finish in lane 8, as long as you've not impeded another athlete, it is legal. It has only harmed you. So there's no disqualification. I think that's going to change soon.
Again?
I think it will.
Will it change to the same rules?
Yes, I think it will change
to
to staying in their lane. I do. Whether that'll come soon or not, I don't know. Because it's hard, because that'll be a Special Olympics ruling, because in national and international snowshoe federation, they don't do 50 and 100 meter races. They do more, longer races, so they're really not worried about that kind of thing. But for layout and setup, essentially what you're going to see is, or should see, and our state competition is a little bit different than the average just because of where we have it. But your 50 and your 100 should be on a flat. Your 200 can start to have some kind of incline, and then when you get to the 400, 800, and 1600, the terrain should change. There should be hills, there should be curves, those kinds of things. At our state competition, you've been at Winter Games. Have you seen the snowshoe course?
I have not.
Okay, our snowshoe course, I wish everybody would go to Galena. You've been up there, right, Mark Snow?
Yeah.
I wish everybody could go to Galena today and see what it looks like, and then go to Galena for Winter Games and see what it looks like, because then you would know that during our Winter Games, well, if you went there today, you would see a ridge like this. Okay, it's the mountain in Galena, right? But for summer or for Winter Games, they make it look like this. There's anywhere from 10 to 20 feet of snow built up just for us for our snowshoe course. And that's quite a feat, I think. And it's, I know I'm from there, so I'm a little prejudiced, but I think they do a fabulous job on that, and really do well by us. And like I said, they make it look like a great snowshoe course. The only issue I have with it, I think it's one of the meanest courses I've ever seen as well, because the back half of our 800, the back half of our 1600, and the finish for our 400 is a sprint uphill. And that's just a rotten trick to pull on somebody, especially on the 1600. It's a rotten trick to pull on somebody who's just run a mile in snowshoes to have them finish on an uphill. But that's the nature of the property that we get to work with, and our athletes have made it look easy. And I never fail to be impressed by our athletes, and especially those ones doing the 800 and 1600, and they do it. I had one athlete this year, actually, she's an athlete from our team. I wasn't out there as a coach, I was out there as the person laying the course. And I always like to be the person that's out on the farthest end, because I know the athletes already know me, and they'll trust me. Because one year we had a blizzard where the snow was pretty much horizontal, and the lanes were blowing shut right in front of our eyes. And there's a part where there's a loop through the woods, and I couldn't keep the far side of the loop open. But I could stomp back and forth long enough, fast enough before they would come back for their next loop to keep that one path open for them. So I wanted to be back there because I knew they knew who I was, and they would trust me to say, turn around, instead of go around the trees, that they would really turn around and it was okay to do that. So I've kind of always just made it a habit of staying back there since then, and had the chance to get back there again this year, and two of our athletes did the 800, and one of our athletes did the 1600. And God love her, she's a walker, and that was all right. But she got back there for her first loop of the 800, and she's looking, and you get this beautiful view out over the Mississippi. And she goes, "Maggie, it's gorgeous back here." It's like, "Yes, Tamika, it is." And she goes, "Thank you for bringing me here." And I'm like, "Oh, God love you, because you're the one doing the mile. I just got to walk back once." And, you just got to be impressed by those kinds of attitudes and efforts when our athletes are out there. So anyway, it's run like track. You can use all of your knowledge from track for training for snowshoeing. There's not a whole lot of miracle things. One of my favorite things that I like for athletes to do, if you're gonna hurt anywhere as a snowshoer when you first started, is in your hip flexors, because you're just not used to having those weights at the bottom of your legs. That's the difference. Otherwise, if you can walk, you can snowshoe. All right. One of the best things to cancel out that possible injury in your hip flexors is the leg swing that we all do with track on the fence, where we're just doing these kinds of things and then switching, and then you start doing it with the snowshoe. All right. So that's a very nice thing. The other thing is any of the power walk kinds of things that you see people doing with track. Absolutely. We do those with our snowshoes.
The dynamic stretching that if you were in the basketball session this morning, that they do to start. We
perfect.
have started incorporating that with the snowshoe because it does, the high knees and I forgot what he called them, the Egyptian walk, the robot walk, whatever it is.
Right. So you're at the really high kick.
Those are all things that will help strengthen and loosen those.
All right. Any of that is going to work on your hip flexors and help. Can you start doing that with your snowshoes on? Yes. Can you start training now? Yeah. This is a great time to learn how to snowshoe. Other than the heat factor, I get that. But this is a really nice time to teach people how to snowshoe because they're not worried about being cold. They're not rubbing their nose because it's running and, worried about their hands because their hands are cold. This is a great time to learn how to snowshoe. October's probably nicer than June and July, but still, this is a great time to learn because then they're not all concerned about their clothes and their hat and their Kleenex and everything else. So this is a great time to teach people how. Starts are very similar to track starts also. The snowshoe has to be behind the line. If it's a sprint, treat it like a sprint. Get them on their find out which is their power leg for their takeoff and go. All right. In the longer distance races, starting at the 200, they'll do waterfall starts. So you need to be teaching your athlete about how to get into the inside of the race course as fast as possible instead of staying outside. Why run any further than you have to? Okay. But they'll do a waterfall start, so you're all lined up across, and then as soon as you can cut in without stomping on somebody else's shoe, that's when you can make your break. All right? When you are timed in snowshoeing, it's your torso crossing the line, not the snowshoe. And when you're racing in snowshoeing, you must have both snowshoes on when you finish the race. It is not like the Tour de France where you can run across the line with one of your snowshoes on your shoulder. They must both be on your feet when you cross the finish line. You can only go a maximum of 3 meters without one shoe on. You have 2 minutes. Should a snowshoe fall off, you have 2 minutes to put it back on and finish your race. Keep in mind that you as coaches, if that should happen in a race, and granted in a 50 and 100 meter, 2 minutes is 5 races later, right? So if your athlete falls because their snowshoe came off, they take the time to put their snowshoe on. At least they complete they complete the race. You as a coach can submit an improved performance time so that they're one, accurately division, but 2, that they'll get to advance. If the snowshoe falls off and they just stop, they don't get to rerun that race just because their snowshoe fell off. If they stop, if they complete the race, they can either rerun the race depending on the tournament director, or you can submit an improved time so that in the next, in their finals, if you know that they're a much faster runner than that 2 minutes and 43 seconds, if they're usually a 43-second 100 meter, you can submit that time so that they're in the appropriate division, and that's your responsibility an honorable coach.